Hey, movie lovers, welcome back for another Anatomy of Movie here at the Popcorn Talk Network. Today we are talking the movie based on a memoir called Boy Erased, so stay tuned as we discuss.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We have Marisa Serafini here.
Hello, everyone.
I am Phil Svitek. Missing in action today is Dimitri Panos. We are listening to the Boy Erased song.
Revelation by Troye Sivan. This is such a great song. I've been listening to this on repeat all week. It's so good.
It is a good song, and we will certainly discuss it at length when we get to the music portion of our show, which for those of you joining us for the very first time or are unfamiliar with how we do things, first off, welcome. Welcome to you for joining us. Secondly, here's how we operate. We're not just a movie review show. Yes, we'll give our opinions right at the top, but then after that, we're pretty much diving into all spoiler territory, so warning now. We're going to talk about plot lines and really dive in deep. And we're not just going to talk about the story. We're going to give you the how and why. How did this get made? Why did it get made? And the culmination right now, it's pretty limited, so we're going to talk a little bit about box office numbers, but not as meaningfully as we normally get to do. But what we will get to talk about is kind of our Oscar predictions, because this is the type of movie that you just see being nominated for a lot of things, and not just because of the subject matter, but certainly that does help to a certain extent. So that's kind of how we do things around here. Also, if you're curious to find out all the various information that we sometimes don't always get to, we do have a PDF in our rundown. It's in the description. And you click that, it has our various notes, so you can follow along and just find little nuggets of information. It rounds out the conversation. But what mostly rounds up the conversation is you at home commenting, letting us know what you thought of the movie, any questions you had, things of that nature. Essentially, whatever you want, just type it, because we're not mind readers.
Let us know what you thought.
Exactly. So, without further ado, even though that was much ado, Marisa, what did you think of Boy Erased?
Okay, so I was actually really excited to go see it. Not really knowing the context of the story, but I was sold via the trailer because you have Russell Crowe, Lucas Hedges, and Nicole Kidman, and Joel Edgerton. Like, those four, I'm immediately sold just for the performance caliber that is, that cast. And I knew it was going to be good, and the music was great. It sold me also with Revelation. We'll get more into that. So I was really excited. And then watching it, I'm like, oh, it's about this. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely get to that too. But so I wasn't fully prepared knowing what I was getting myself into watching. And it's such a beautifully, painfully told story and a social commentary on how people treat other people and act on certain situations when it comes to homosexuality, which I feel in today's age and definitely within Hollywood, we're becoming more. I feel the community's becoming more acceptable in some ways. Yeah, we have a long way to go, but more stories are being told about homosexuality without not talking about it. They are addressing it, and I think this movie did a great job of bringing attention to homosexuality and how it affects not just one person, but a family, a community. And I think they did that very well. And walking away with of this film, I was like, wow. It moves you, and you think about it afterwards.
Yeah, this is, to be honest, I knew what this movie was about, and I was avoiding it for a long time, given the subject matter. Now, not because I'm against, I'm in full support of gay communities and things like that, but I just knew, based on the fact that it was a gay conversion therapy, that was the subject matter, I knew that it was going to be difficult. So I prepared heavily to kind of watch it, and I knew it would be a beautiful movie in terms of what it was trying to tell, and it would articulate it very well, and the message would be extremely, extremely powerful. And to be honest, when I walked in, the thing that made it even harder than I expected was the humanity of which the gay conversion camp was treated with. Because in a sense...
Or inhumane, as you can say.
Well, in this, it started off very, like, it had logic behind it. It had this notion of, in a different reality, if I didn't know any better, you could imagine yourself almost subscribing to that. There was like a painful love that was associated with it rather than, I don't know, like a Nazi concentration camp where they're just beating people. You know what I mean? Like, initially it played that whole hand where nothing's wrong with you, you just made a bad choice, and it almost came from a place of love, but it deeply wrong. And that's what made it painful to watch, is that they're you know, the villain wasn't as clearly defined initially. And in fact, you know, I didn't want to like necessarily talk about this too early, but might as well. There's a big part, you know, they're kind of comparing heterosexuality to homosexuality, and how like you have to think about the quote consequences. You know, homosexuality, as the movie says in the camp, leads to rape, violence, and so forth. And I thought for a moment, from the perspective of Jared, that he was like, okay, well, I haven't done those things. I thought that's how they would address it. And then we cut to a rape scene where he gets raped.
Yeah.
I was like, I was not ready for that.
No.
Because then, in a sense, it validates what the camp was saying. And even though he's not the one that was raping in that moment, but the fact that, like, someone that was homosexual raped him, and then, like, that's what caused him to be outed, it certainly wasn't good.
Right. And it was really moving when he said, you know, that's not my sin. And that is a, what you say, quote unquote, consequence about it. It's hard because that was that was when you see it in the film, that was like the first moment where he allowed his homosexuality to take place. Like, he acted upon it a little bit, and then it went farther than he expected, and which ultimately led to the rape, but in a way, it just like he had to explore his homosexuality, and it went into a dark path in which he didn't realize. But it's not the cause of why he was homosexuality. It's just what happened to him.
Yeah, and you know, very deliberately, this movie has both sides exploring, you know, and figuring it out. You know, whether, like you said, whether it is the parents, in this case, Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman, or Jared in this case. But let's backtrack just a quick tad, just to give some context. So this is based off of a memoir, which is based off, of course, the truth of Jared Conley. And for a long time, he was gripping with, like, these emotions, and it took him almost like 10 years just to write this memoir. He felt he couldn't write a movie adaptation of it, so he wanted to he thought filmmakers would be a better fit for it, so he allowed this to happen. Joel Edgerton kind of comes along. Now, he feels conflicted because, you know, is he going to be able to tell this story? But he felt compelled, like this came to him rather than him coming to it. And kind of from there, in a sense, the rest is history in terms of, like, it was just very symbiotic. Everyone was on board to make this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Joel had read the actual memoir, and it did speak to him, just in the sense that it was a story that needed to be told. And he just, as that creative, and, you know, we know he's a writer and stuff, he had the motivation to write something told properly. And he, once he got the approval from the real Jared, that, and he had the support through all the revise and iterations that led after the first original draft. So that helped him, because he kept writing more and adding more authenticity as he was writing along.
Yeah, and you know, even just down to everybody else, like Lucas Hedges, he interacted a lot with the real Jared and went to his family. Russell Crowe went to the church of the real Marshal and took notes based on his sermon. Mm-hmm. That would be an interesting, like, you know, to see into the mind of what he was picking up.
Yeah, and what the real father was like in real life. And I think just goes to show that those are actors really getting into the characters because they are portraying real life people. It's not fiction in that sense. So that's good on the actors to really take the time and effort to know their characters, that they're people that they're portraying, and really bring it to life on screen. And also, so we have Joel Edgerton, a part of it, but also Focus Features got heavily involved, being the studio that backed it up, because the Focus Features has made Academy Award winning LGBTQ movies, such as Dallas Buyers Club, Danish Girl, Milk, Brokeback Mountain. So this is not their first rodeo with covering homosexuality films and actually telling a meaningful story.
Absolutely. And going back to an earlier point that you were talking about, like their dedication, because these are real life people. But we also we've said this on other shows, whether for fictitious movies or not. The more specific you are with your characters, ironically, the more universal. And in this sense, like yes, they're portraying the experiences of this one person. Granted, you can include the family in that, but their journey, in essence, is the journey of a lot of people, and that's what the end cards do, and highlight that. Like, listen, this is his story, but this is happening throughout all of America, pretty much.
Right. And I like how they give credibility, because not that it is incredible, but to just really hone in the fact that this is happening. This is worldwide. It's not just within our country. This is worldwide. And I think another movie that did that so well with the end title cards is Spotlight, that delves into priests abusing young children in that sense. And it's a bigger pandemic than you think it is, and more people need the awareness of that. And I think Boy Erased does a great job of bringing that to light.
Absolutely. Might as well just a couple of quick stats for you here real quick. Currently, this is America, 36 states don't have lawsuits against conversion therapy, while 14 states plus Washington, D.C. have passed laws protecting LGBTQ youth from it. According to the Human Rights Campaign, highly rejected LGBTQ youth were 8 times more likely to have attempted suicide, 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression, more than 3 times as likely to use illegal drugs, more than 3 times likely to be at high risk for HIV and STDs.
Yeah. And seeing people don't realize those numbers too, because they are still people, at the end of the day as well. But because it's still unfortunately such a taboo thing for homosexuality, and it's not as accepted as well as it should be, it does put a damper on people's well-being and their mental health, and how it actually affects them emotionally and physically. That unfortunately, suicide and depression, those are symptoms of that.
Yeah. And to be clear, and perhaps if there is anyone who's trying to figure this out, what we're saying is not LGBT youth, this is their stats. It's rejected, meaning you or whatever society, you have rejected them, and so they have nowhere to turn to, and this is what it leads to. So let me be 100% clear on what these stats actually are. Yeah. It's not them as a function of society, it's society functioning against them.
Yeah, and these stats that you just read are for the youth community. It's not even going for the adult community as well. So I imagine even for the adult community, the numbers are higher.
Yeah.
Or at least, probably, and I'm not making a generalization, but that, I'd imagine it's probably high, if not equal, for the adults, because they were young too.
Yeah, and, one of the big aspects of this movie, obviously true to life, but religion, it plays a big part from this standpoint, right? The fact that his dad, Marshal, is a pastor just already sets it, which, and from that sense, I appreciated the battle that certainly Jared had of wait, I know I'm gay, but I still think I can believe in God. Just because I'm gay doesn't mean that God hates me. And again, ironically, that's where like things became really tough for me because when he goes to camp, they kind of said the same thing, except they said like, "Hey, God hasn't stopped loving you, but you got to just get rid of this quote unquote bad thing, and you can."
And it was just their mentality of how they were, I don't want to say tricking, but how they were trying to hone in with the students at the camp, like just their mental thought chains. Like, you're doing X, Y, and Z that's taking you farther away from God. You get rid of homosexuality, you get rid of those qualities, you can become one again with God. And like, it's such a twisted way to get back to, just for acceptance of God. And they were always talking about homosexuality is a choice. You're choosing to this, you're choosing to that. It's not what you are, it's what you're choosing to do. So all these twisted ways that they're really drilling into these kids, it's just frustrating that some of them are trying to believe it and some of them obviously don't. But just that they're getting away with it. Like, that's how they taught. It was very frustrating.
Well, the fact that they said on point blank, like, this is not your fault. This is your parents. This is your family's fault. And then, like, let's pinpoint all the screwed up shit they have going on in their lives that caused this.
Yeah, your gene map, whatever that was called. And it is crazy because, yeah, maybe alcoholism is, people say it's hereditary, but it's a behavioral trait that can get passed down. It's not genetic, it's behavioral. And so it's twisted in that sense that they're even going back to like, where's the cause of the issue? This isn't your fault. It happened somewhere. Let's figure it out. But that also brings like more shame and animosity towards the people who could be in the wrong for starting it. Yeah. So it's just their twisted mentality of what they thought of homosexuality. It's frustrating to watch throughout the entire film.
It is, because again, they twist it on its head. They are not drill they have moments of being drill sergeants, like when they're throwing the baseballs at like the kids, and they want them to hit it with the bat, and then the one kid gets injured. But apart from that, first off, anytime I feel like that you create things and you say like you can't share it with outside the group, then you really don't necessarily trust the process. Because if it could, with, I look at things and, I'll make a claim on anatomy, right or wrong, but I say it because I allow criticism. And if my statement is false, it will be criticized as such, and I'll learn from it, or I'll learn that it actually does hold up. And so, but that's what that allows you to do if you're more open about it. By closing your doors, you don't invite criticism.
Right, and also it just shows that there were red flags immediately with that community when they're skirting on lines of moral behavior and stuff, when they're not comfortable of allowing to talk. No one can know what we're doing outside of these walls. So that whatever they're doing, they're skating that, like, is this legal? Is this not? But also very concerning because they're dealing with minors. And when minors can't even talk about it with their parents, the parents should be, the parental figures should be like, red flags, what's happening with my children.
Well, I look at, I had the privilege of working at a hospice for a number of years. And I say privilege because you the compassion you start to have for people. But one of the big things that hospice has that's different than, let's say, a hospital is they care for not just the patient, but the family. And so in this case, like, as far as conversion is concerned, yes, you're quote unquote converting this child, but we're seeing that it's just, if you really cared that much, you wouldn't just be converting the child. You would kind of offer support for the rest of the family, and not keep it away from them. And that's what like Nicole Kidman, her character Nancy. That was one of the things I appreciated. Like, what a performance!
Praise.
Just by Nicole Kidman, but just Nancy herself to dig deeper and to really stand up at the end against her husband.
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, first of all, we both love Nicole Kidman. We've said it time and time again on Anatomy. But also just showing that there are good people out in the world that, witness a lot of bad stuff happening, but don't do enough that in their power that they can. And I like Nancy put her foot down and be like, no, you're doing something wrong. This is my child, and I'm actually going to take the initiative steps and assertive steps to go against this. And I like that because it senses like, yeah, maybe not everyone can accept homosexuality, especially if it's in your children, because like I've witnessed parents like completely denounce their children, and it's not fun. So to know that Jared still had a loving parental figure that can still support him in that way against what's happening to him, it gave the just the audience some semblance of hope. There are people out there that can support you.
That and like especially in those moments, like you want your parents of all people to really
stick
help
up for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's in the case of Jared, it's one thing to come out, but the way it wasn't his choice to come out in the way that he did, number one, and it wasn't his choice to realize that he's gay necessarily in the way that he did. Like when you, like, yeah, he was rape is like one of the most human and worst sins you can possibly imagine, besides, let's say, like straight up killing somebody.
Right.
The only difference is, I guess, that like rape, in a sense, you're carrying that with you for the rest of your life, whereas at least if you die, it's
well, the thing is, like, murder is governmentally illegal. Rape is immoral. There's a difference. Rape isn't legal. It's immoral. Highly immoral. So there is the difference there. But also, it did allow for, this is going to sound terrible, but like the rape situation did allow Jared to finally have the opportunity to tell his parents. Granted, not a deal. This is not how he wanted to, come out. But it gave him the opportunity to actually accept and for who he is and tell his parents. Because had that not happened, we probably would have gone more years without him, still being in the closet.
Yeah. I mean, in some sense, that there's a book called The Obstacle is the Way. So in this sense, like, even though all of these things were an obstacle, like the fact that, you look at the culmination of his life, like, this movie, the ending of it, but the fact that he's writing about this and he's made it kind of his life's mission to bring this to attention until it is eliminated, is obviously a noble cause. So it's unfortunate for him, but he's using that pain for good.
Yeah. Use it as a challenge and work your way through it or work your way around it to get your end successful goal. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to bring attention and awareness, and he did it through the unfortunate circumstances that he went through, but he ultimately did it. Yeah,
and, as far, like, when I look at the movie, the fact that he was able to talk with his mom, it often comes down to that, like, the ability for people just to talk. So at first they weren't necessarily on the same page, but the more they had conversations and so forth, they came to a mutual understanding. Whereas with his dad just completely shut things off.
Right.
And even at the end, when he kind of shows up and says, like, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I'm doing this, and I want you to know, and, like, yes, it'd be great to have you read it, but if nothing else, like, I'm here to tell you that I'm going forth with this." Mm-hmm. And even then, the father still wasn't. He didn't say much in response. Exactly.
And we see the differences between the mother and the father throughout the movie. The mother is still genuinely, caring and supportive. We see her read the handbook that they give the students. Like, she is actively trying to figure out what's going on, so she can get closer to her son, understand her son more. We don't see the father ever making the effort. Once he heard homosexuality, that was it, done. He couldn't hear anything else or see anything else. But the mother actively, throughout the movie, put the effort into trying and understanding everything better. So, and it makes sense why the son, Jared, was more connected and more communicative to his mother, not his father.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, too, the real Marshal is becoming a little bit more open, but he's still, as you can probably imagine, a little bit reserved about this whole thing, but he is slowly starting to open up. And the fact that In a sense, it's almost like a miracle, the fact that the real Marshall and Russell Crowe had the relationship that they did. Like, they would text back and forth and whatnot. So obviously Marshall does care that if nothing else, he wants to be portrayed correctly. It might not be in the best light, but at least it's correct.
Right. And the thing that I find interesting about this film that I think is actually pretty good, but it might frustrate other people, but I think they did it wonderfully. Joel did it wonderfully. That there isn't a clear set villain in this film. And there's really not that one bad guy. You could think maybe the father is for not being accepting of his son. You can think it's Sykes for, drilling in, you're wrong. It's really, it's just like how you personally as an audience member see what's right and what's wrong in your personal values. So it doesn't clear cut say this is the antagonist, this is protagonist. It's like it's whoever or whatever values that go against you, that's wrong.
Yeah, and obviously that's a very real world type of application of it, because as you go through the world, you'll hear a lot of opinions, especially nowadays, everyone's got one. And you kind of have to make up your own mind and your own judgments of, do I agree with this, do I not?
Yeah, it's ambiguous in that way, but in a good way, because everyone's different.
It is. The unfortunate part is one of the central messages in terms of the camp that kept being reinforced multiple ways was, fake it till you make it, essentially, right? And you're essentially faking your emotions.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
It is tough. It's for when we had, I only know about his real name, Troy, it's about Gary. Gary was the one who's like, fake it till you make it, play the part. From his character, I understood it's play the part just for your survival, that you can get through this camp and you can make it day in, day out. You can't really apply it to real life, but for this camp, fake it, go with whatever they're saying, act like you agree and whatever, but no, once you leave, you still have your core values. I find that interesting because you just wonder how many other people really do that in real life who aren't true to themselves.
Yeah, and that could apply beyond just like homosexuality too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. I mean, when you look at one of the powerful things about the movie is that on the surface level, and this is kind of how it should be, right? Jared, in essence, is a great human being. The only thing is, he's just someone who happens to be gay. Now, it's a part of him, but it doesn't define him.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants to be a writer. He, one of the big conflicts is he wants to continue with college, and he's taken out of college to do this, and furthermore said, like, hey, you should take the rest of the year off.
Right.
What? I want to learn.
Would be like, the college is not the best thing for you right now in your life. Are you just like, what authority figure would tell you higher education is not good for you? Like, that's so unrealistic.
Yeah. It's it is,
but that's
not the norm, obviously.
That's the frustration with just Sykes, because everything that Sykes, we'd like to say, truly believed, he was trying to drill into these students. It's like, no, that's not necessarily right.
Yeah. I mean, I give Joel a lot of credit. I mean, it's one thing to direct, it's one thing to write, but he is playing a very conflicted character. You know what I mean? It'd be one thing if he took a more simpler role, or one that, let's, for lack of a better term, objectively a little bit nicer, or like the good guy. But he, for all intents he is playing that antagonist, and which is obviously, as far as the message he's trying to get out with the movie, is in direct opposition of what he's trying to say. But in order to do that, he has to, the better he is as Victor, the better the movie becomes. Which it's a weird duality, and I give him a lot of credit for being able to pull the hell out of this.
Yeah, and especially wearing so many hats at the same time. So kudos to Joel. He's great, and I think he did Victor Sykes such a good job. You loved to hate him in that sense. You could say he is the main antagonist, but you don't really want to say. But he is the one that is the most, gives the most opposition throughout the entire film. very frustrating because the way that he was like making up situations, especially when it comes to the confrontation, like talk to your father, you hate your father, and he's starting these moments that's getting Jared more angry, and while the animosity is building, so is the audience. Like we're getting there, we're getting frustrated at the same time, and it does a great job of like just slowly building to something that was literally explosive.
And you know, to that point, the interesting, like the fact that you have to blame someone else, right? Because it's such an easy, oftentimes, right? You know, whenever people tell you to change, they say like you got to accept the blame for yourself, or like you got to change yourself. Mm-hmm. But what this, in the most fucked up way possible, what this camp is doing is saying no, the blame is on someone else, and we not only are we going to say that the blame is on someone else, you get to be upset at that person for doing this to you.
Yeah, it's like some twisted version of transference.
Yeah, and so, but Jared is smart enough to know, like even though my dad doesn't necessarily agree, he never stopped loving his dad.
Yeah,
and he said like, no, I love my mom, I love my dad, and I like God wants me to love everybody, so I'm gonna love everybody, and I just happen to be gay.
Right, and this situation just came after the night of where we witnessed another student, Cameron. Poor Cameron. Shoot, we can get into Cameron. But like literally beating the crap out of him because they believed if Cameron can't accept and get rid of, quote unquote, this homosexuality, we're going to beat the living crap out of him. We're going to beat the homosexuality out of him. And to be followed by another situation that was obviously formulated to get a reaction in that sense. So at this point in the film, the audience really doesn't know what Psych is capable of. We know he's capable of physical abuse. Now he's capable of emotional abuse.
So let's talk about Cameron. I was avoiding him for a long time because...
Yeah, because it's difficult.
Yeah. Luckily...
But we have to. I mean, it is kind of the elephant in the room.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is, the bright spot of all of this is that change is possible, you know, and we have to kind of face these demons head on, as difficult as it is. But so in that sense, let's talk about Cameron. He obviously, like when we talked about the statistics earlier, he represents one of the three statistics. Mm-hmm. He was at higher rate to commit suicide. I think suicide, he does commit.
Right.
You know,
and what's really sad is near the beginning, probably in the first couple days, we see the students there and Jared there. I personally had the thought, I was like, someone's going to kill themselves. I just know. It's like someone's going to commit suicide at the painful path that we're going down. Like someone has to. I didn't know who, but eventually it led to Cameron was the one. And it's so frustrating, but Cameron had his moment where, yes, he was beaten, but because he couldn't save himself, he did save someone else before his ultimate unfortunate death as well. But I like how he still had an influence on the world. He could still help someone else, even though, ironically, he couldn't save himself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. So I'll leave it at that, rather than murky up the waters. Anything else story-wise you want to talk about before we shift gears into the production aspects of things?
Other than the fact that I did like near the end where Jared, he is older, he is more mature, he's more comfortable with himself and who he is as a person, he's going to be fine. And you can see that he's happy. He's living on his own. He has a successful writing career. He has friends who genuinely love him. He can make his own decisions by riding the car with his hands out, you know. So, you know, he went through hell, but he came out, like, okay. Kind of, you know, and not to say unscathed because, he went through hell, but you know that he survived, essentially.
Yeah, and I believe he does live with his husband, correct? I've been consuming so much content, and so hopefully I'm not making that up. But yes, it is.
He is happily married.
He is happily married. So kudos to him, and they live in New York, correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, That's what I thought. Good for me for remembering.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I might as well take before we dive into the production side of things. I want to give you. Normally, I don't do this, but I want to give you the upcoming calendar of events here for Anatomy, so you know why my brain might be fried at certain moments. So today we've done The Grinch, a sort of compressed version of that, and we've also done The Girl in the Spider's Web, so we can check those out. This coming Tuesday, we will be doing Fantastic Beasts, the second one, The Crimes of
Grindelwald.
There you go, and Widows. Mm-hmm. So one sort of fun movie, one Widows, I'm told, is a pretty dark movie as well.
Intense.
Then we have Thanksgiving, so we won't be here that Friday. However, there are lots of Thanksgiving movies, so we can't rob you of that. So we will be doing Creed 2 and Welcome to Marwyn on Tuesday the 27th. And then November 30th, which is Friday, we will do Instant Family and Ralph Breaks the Internet. So that's just like in the coming weeks, and that still puts us behind on stuff.
All right. So if you're looking for us, we're at the movie theaters.
Yep. Also, speaking of which, we do have a long archive of a lot of shows. Like, in particular, if you're interested in LGBTQ stories, we've done Love, Simon. What was the one? Why am I blanking on it? Timothy Chalamet.
Call Me by Your Name.
That's the one. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones that pop into mind. Anyway, back to our regular scheduled programming.
And we've also done, but it is relevant. We also did Lady Bird, which
Yes.
Lucas Hedges was also in with Timothy Chalamet, and Lucas Hedges plays a homosexual boy in that film as well.
There you go. He was just getting ready for the role.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so let's talk about the production side of things. About 38 days of filming with 400 hours of footage, which might seem like a lot to most normal folk, but it sounds about on par.
Right. That's a very fast turnaround for filming, but it isn't a comic book movie. There isn't visual effects and explosions here and there. This is a movie that's all about writing and character and performance. And they definitely did it. And really, if you think about it, the film really only takes place in about 3, maybe 4 locations. So it's not like they had to travel the world. It is within its own space.
And overall, it plays relatively real time. Like, we're confined to that 12-day camp period, plus or minus a couple scenes beforehand, like what leads up to him. We get a couple of instances of that. And then we essentially jump 4 years after.
4 years.
So it is, it plays relatively real time.
Yeah, and the hotel that the mother and Jared were staying at, that's essentially one location. And we had those houses that people graduate to, which is right next to the main location of the camp. So it's literally everything is within like a few miles of each other. And we are not to say we're stuck, but we're placed in a specific area.
Yeah, and even look-wise, like from the characters, the settings, and so forth, it has that very middle of nowhere but everywhere type of feel. Like, you can imagine this as a small town, pretty much any part of America.
Right, and I think that's the beauty of the story, is that there are universal themes, there are international themes. That yes, we're in one location, but the story resonates everywhere.
Yes. And one of the things that resonates, I want you to talk about the color blue, because it's a very specific portion of it. And and you managed to find this, so I want to give you the opportunity.
So the DP, Edward Crowe, his vision was to keep the film as raw and realistic as possible. So he used natural light whenever possible, especially at the camp, and they bounced a lot of the light off of the white walls in there. It felt like a church, very, 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 I don't want to say boring, but like lifeless kind of church. And they used a lot of like natural, neutral uniform sets. So a lot of people were in white and their khaki pants. And
let me ask you this:
pants.
do you think like the quote unquote lifeless church? Obviously there's the notion that God is everywhere, but in essence, because they're trying to convert, and even though they're using God's word to try to convert, but the fact that this probably isn't God's word, that God would not be there. Does that sound convoluted?
A little bit, but I think I get what you're saying. I mean,
Meaning it's grim because God is in fact not there, and he's not. He doesn't want this to happen, so he's not going to shine a light upon this place like a normal church that is much more lively.
And colorful. And we see it. And we see it so often in television and films where we see life and personality. You see color, and at that camp, you saw no color. I think the only color that we really saw was when they had the mock funeral, how twisted that was.
Jesus.
They shined yellow onto the casket, and that's literally the only color you see. And like they're like glorifying death because this is what ultimately would happen to you. Again, very twisted. So it shows that, yeah, they kept honing in that God is there and God loves you and God is everywhere, but there is no life and no color there. Like, God's not there. It's empty.
The only color was blue was the very deliberate color. So Victor, his shirts were oftentimes like, blue for that reason, which, you can look at as heaven. You can look at as, I don't know, deep blue ocean meaning and so forth. Like, blue is a very hopeful color. So it's ironic.
Also, but blue can go either way. Like, blue is also a receding color. Blue is also represented as dark. So you can see blue as lively as the sky or blue as dark as the ocean. So it really depends on how you see it. It could go either way. And I think that really adds to the character of Sykes because he was so convoluted.
Yeah.
And until ultimately we find out his true nature at the end of the film.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, as we continue on, you really want to talk about the soundtrack, in particular the song. So I want to give you the opportunity to do so.
Right. So one of the main songs, "Revelation," that was playing during the scene where Jared is with Xavier, and the first night that he spent with a boy, the song "Revelation" was playing, and it's heavily featured in the trailer as well. And we played it at the beginning of the show. So Troye Sivan, who was the actor who played Gary, he is very publicly out LGBTQ actor and writer, musician in that sense, and he actually collaborated with Jonesy from the Icelandic rock band Sigur. I'm gonna butcher this. I'm sorry, Sigur Ró.
Sigur.
Yeah, Sigur Ró. But actually,
very popular band, by the way.
It was Joel Edgerton that went up to Troy and he was like, "Can you write a song for this? Because this is like definitely your wheelhouse." And so Edgerton actually gave him the opportunity, and so they wrote Revelation, and Troy says it is about self-discovery, self-exploration, and finding inner peace about the song. And they only wrote it in a couple hours. Yeah. And honestly, I think it's going to get nominated for Best Song for Academy Awards.
I think it should.
It's a beautiful song.
Absolutely. 100%. The film premiered at the Telluride Film Festival in September of this year. This movie was supposed to come out a little bit earlier, but they pushed it back. As I mentioned at the top, it really is, right now it's only in 5 theaters.
Yeah, 5 theaters.
So I went to one of the theaters.
I probably went to one of the others.
So we are lucky enough to have this. So it doesn't really make much sense to talk about the box office in any. Like right now, it's made about 1.5 million worldwide, which for
5 theaters, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. So kudos to them overall. But Rotten Tomatoes, it's gotten 85%. And so forth, 95% overall in terms of audiences who would recommend it. So that's not a cinema score, but it's a post track, which is another thing that tracks this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, let's talk Oscar predictions. Let's spend some time. Best Picture. Do you see this going up for Best Picture?
Yes, because it is a relevant for writing the story. Call Me by Your Name was also last year nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So yes.
And it's just, forget the subject matter. It's just a great movie. It's a very well-made movie, well-acted, well-crafted, well-written, all that stuff. So speaking of which, I think direction.
Direction, absolutely. Joel Edgerton. I would even also give it for acting for Joel Edgerton. Nicole Kidman, even though
Nicole, would you put her as
supporting.
lead? Or
No, I would put her as supporting because Lucas is more the lead in this film.
Yeah, it's tough because like to me she's the lead female character.
She's always the lead in like every film that she does. I mean, it's Nicole Kidman. She's usually billed number one, but I believe Lucas. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Number one.
Lucas is billed number one in this movie, so I would put. The main story is not about Nancy. Yes, she plays a heavy part in it, but it's about Jared, not Nancy. So I would give her to supporting.
Okay. Lucas, would you give?
Absolutely.
Okay. That'll be interesting. He's a little bit young, right? In terms of the Oscar.
He
lead
is young,
actors,
but he's already been nominated once.
Supporting, though.
For supporting, yes. But
Which is different.
He's definitely graduating up to.
He is.
I mean, he carried this entire film.
Russell Crowe, would you give him supporting?
No.
No?
No. I mean, his character is frustrating to watch him, but it's not out of Russell Crowe's wheelhouse. There's really nothing, and it's not a knack against Russell. He's great. I mean, he's an Academy Award winner too. But it was nothing stand out about his actual performance that'd be like, yes, that's Oscar worthy.
He literally looks like the real father.
He looks like the father. He put on weight to get the physical portrayal, but for the emotion and actor, there wasn't a moment in this movie I was like, yeah, that's memorable.
Okay, fair enough. Writing, this would be best adaptation. Yeah,
I think definitely.
I don't think any of the like technical ones. Like I don't think it's an editing one. I don't think wardrobe. Really
I can't really think production design because it's not over the top.
But music.
Yeah, best song. That's gonna be up there with "Star Is Born" for sure.
Yeah, I think "Star Is Born" is gonna kill it on those.
Oh, it's gonna be great, and I can't wait. But
at least this deserves recognition.
Revelation definitely deserves recognition. Because of the content behind it and the context of it. It is for the LGBT community.
If the Oscars were smart, they would do a duo, a mashup of Shallow and this, because Lady Gaga is an advocate of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
So if they were smart, I'm just putting it out there. Do your job, produce it, get the two on stage.
Yeah. And they would make magic. I would only watch the Academy Awards for that.
Look at that. See?
Yeah.
Listen to Marisa.
I mean, you know I love Lady Gaga, so I'm already there.
Anywho, anything else that you could see it being nominated for?
I think we hit probably the most.
The ones that it would be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to us, watching us. I'd be very curious to know your comments. In particular, if you have personal experience, whether you are a parent, whether you are someone who's gone through this. I'd love to hear from you. If you are listening to this and you are you are for conversion camps, as much as I disagree, I invite you to comment. I think when we
why
we talk. Yeah, when we talk about the importance of dialogue, I think it goes both ways. So I'm not adverse to, as I said, criticism. So if you criticize me in the movie, let's see it. I'm open to it. Anyway, any final thoughts, Marisa?
It's a beautiful film. It's hard to recommend because it is so serious and it's heavy for the most part. So you have to know what you're getting yourself into when you watch it. But it's a beautiful film that a lot of people should see. I
agree. Thank you for joining us. You can interact with us more directly at Serafini TV is where Marisa's at.
Yep.
I'm at Phil Svitek. Thank you guys for joining us. I already gave you the schedule of upcoming stuff, so check back. We've got lots and lots of stuff coming down the pipeline. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.